gentlemen, it's time for the Schmoedown Rundown. Introducing first, Frank Janisch, and the host of the Schmoedown Rundown, Brad Gilmore.
What's up, Movie Trivia Schmoedown fans? Welcome to the Schmoedown Rundown, the official after show for the Movie Trivia Schmoedown. I am Brad Gilmore, and today is going to be a little bit of a different show. We have a lot of the great things lined up for you, but joining me for the front half of this incredible episode is the one and the only, the producer extraordinaire, Senor Christopher Clark.
This is going to be interesting. I almost called you Frank, Brad. This is amazing. Off the bat.
Well, at least I didn't call you Patrick Clark. Chris and I are going to break down a couple of news items, and the first of the live matches this week between the Real Rejects and the Wildberries. Then Frank, Chris, and myself will be on the call here for a moment talking about the cut scenes that we saw there, the storyline points. And then Frank and Chris will be interviewing the one and the only, the Outlaw, John Rocha, and it's almost 40 uninterrupted minutes with the Outlaw. So interesting stuff there. Chris, though, I say we started off hot. We get into it. A couple of news items this week, just a couple of small little things. First off, the Twitter. The Movie Trivia Schmoedown has an official Twitter account. I want to pull it up here so the people at home can see it. They have a new official account that you can follow everything Schmoedown on, and it is simply just the Schmoedown. Chris, maybe you want to throw a graphic up there so everyone can see the Schmoedown. And, we just want you to go over there and give it a quick little follow. That's going to be your main hub on Twitter. Obviously, if you have, like, the Movie Trivia Schmoedown Facebook group, a lot of news is there. Now you can migrate over if you're more of a Twitter person like me, and you can see everything on Twitter at the Schmoedown. Great stuff there. But this is the thing that Chris Clark is excited about. And by the way, Chris, we still got to put that blooper reel out. The fans are asking for it. We got over 60 comments asking for the blooper reel. So we might need to attach it to the end of this episode. I don't know. We'll talk to Frank. The thing that Chris Clark is probably really excited about right now is that Top That has their next match set, and it looks like it's going to be Top That versus critically acclaimed. Chris Clark, talk to me.
Look, Top That is and was a #1 contender spot. Objectively speaking, it's kind of weird to put Top That against critically acclaimed, who are 1-1, but I think it is just Christians seeing a lot of potential in Bibbs and Whitney for good reason. They know their stuff. Bibiani knows his stuff. I actually am really, really thrilled that he's giving them this opportunity, because if they succeed, they could be the comeback team of the year moving forward, and this match just has so much potential. How it got to this is confusing even to a huge fan like I am, to critically acclaimed, and I'm thankful that Christian has done this. So it's really their game to lose, though, because if they lose, it could set them back a bit, and it's concerning.
I know, and you know what, though? We saw with that top 10 match, that definitely, there's a chink in the armor there. There's a way to beat them, and that's by having more knowledge of how the game is played. Maybe not specifically, movie trivia knowledge, but if you know and you have a better strategy and you know the game's played, that seems to be the weakness of Top That. But one has to assume after that loss to Top 10, they've probably done a little bit more research, so we're going to have to see how that goes here in the future. That's going to be a match to watch, and we might have to get Bibbs back on to talk about it the way that it goes. I see big things for William Bibiani, and I think that it might be in the team division. That's where I think he might succeed the most at. So, but we'll see. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. That's the great thing about the Movie Trivia Schmoedown, Chris Clark. That's my favorite thing about the Movie Trivia Schmoedown, is that you never know what's going to happen. But speaking of that, let's talk about another thing that's been implemented now into the lexicon that is the Schmoedown, into the world that is the Schmoedown, the universe that is the Schmoedown, and that is now we're going to get to see live in living color Schmoedown matches, and we saw the two filmed ones this week for the Movie Trivia Schmoedown. And here's what I got to say is, and I know that we talked about it a little bit right after the live event happened with Dale and Taylor and Frank, and I know that we're going to talk about it with the Outlaw John Rocha, but the production value of these live shows was very, very good. I loved how it was presented. I loved how it was shot. I love how it was edited. I love the lighting on the stage. This was perfect for the Movie Trivia Schmoedown, Chris.
Oh, it was fantastic. Because look, as I said, I'm going to say with John, and as I keep saying, it felt like a rock concert. It really did. It had this kind of feel that a theater show should have, and a live show should have, with the personalities and everything, and the lighting, and the tech guys killed it. It's like, it's hard to do a live show. It really is, because everything counts on the tech guys. If something screws up, it's on the tech guys to make sure all of that goes according to plan. It's very little about the movie trivia. It's all about how, and the atmosphere around it, and how that builds up that live show. And I feel like they killed it, and they did it correctly, because that show means nothing without the atmosphere. It really doesn't. And they killed the atmosphere. The lighting killed, everything killed, and everything just aligned correctly. And the theater production was a rock concert. It really truly was, and I am thankful for that. And they lit that LA on fire for a night. It was great.
Yeah, they really did. I love the presentation of it. So let's talk about it, because I know a lot of this will be covered in the interview at the end of the show with Senor John Rocha, the Outlaw, John Rocha. But let's talk about this match. The first match that we got to see was the Wildberries, or should I say Wildberries, and the Real Rejects. Real Rejects, we as a team, we haven't really is this the first time we've seen them this season?
This is the first time we have seen them in a long time. In fact, the last time we saw them, I think they kind of...
Yeah, when was their... I don't know when their last match was. It was a while back.
I think was it the retirement match between them and the Wranglers? I completely is blanking right now.
It might have been. That might have been.
I don't remember, and I feel like I might be remembering this wrong, and you can tell me in the comments if I am, but I feel like they kind of alluded to taking a break or a retirement kind of thing after their last match. So it's great to see them again. They really brought the same spunk as Wildberries did, and they succeeded.
You know, when this match was announced, I feel like I knew what we were going to get, and what we were going to get was something fun and energetic, and it was going to be one of the more entertaining matches for a different reason. I think that's exactly what we got here with the Wildberries and the Real Rejects. You know, Christian said it, I think, the best leading up to the match. You know, he asked the crowd, who's here Wildberries fans? And the crowd erupts, and he goes, I don't know why they have so many fans. They haven't even won a match yet, but it's just their magnetism and Makuga, Elliot Dewberry, something about them just clicks. I've called them on this show before the Schmoedown version of the Bushwhackers. The Bushwhackers back in the 80s, WWF, early 90s. There was no reason fans should attach themselves to him so much, but they did. They never won matches. They were just two crazy guys who went out there and had fun and entertained, and that's what the Wildberries are. That's why I was so excited to see them and their opening promos, them coming out. Josh Makuga is he's got this phonetic energy about him. I loved everything about it. What'd you think? What'd you think kind of the whole introduction of the two teams?
Well, look, the introduction of the two teams was actually interesting, because Christian kind of backtracked on it in round 2 when he said that the Wildberries were not the favorites of the match, but the Real Rejects were. I feel like for the theater and the performance itself, I think it worked better that the Wildberries kind of followed up Real Rejects, because usually the favorites come out last. But the fact that the Wildberries were able to follow up the Rejects was Christian in his mind saying, okay, this needs to actually have a rhythm to it for the audience. He knew, as well as everybody did, that everybody mostly was there for Josh Makuga. People were familiar with Josh Makuga because he is one of the highlights of, and one of the most popular personalities of, Collider. People know of Elliot Dewberry, people know of Greg and John, but they're not as big of names in that sort of area like Josh Makuga was. And I think doing that and giving that kind of spunk and that energy kind of catapulted the show, because what's important with like a musical or something is you need to start off and you need to grab the audience. And the way they kind of filmed and they kind of performed their opening acts through the audience themselves, and the way that, yes, Christian didn't have the favorite come out last like usual, but the fact that he allowed this to happen gave that kind of to the audience and that catapult that the show needed. And I think it succeeded really well in starting off the show because it's important that you start off a show with a bang or you don't grab your audience. So the whole opening was fantastic just for that reason alone, is it did its job.
Yeah, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. And Josh McCouga is just, he's one of those guys that, he was one of my favorites when I first started watching the Movie Trivia Schmoedown. I didn't even care about his record. I didn't even know his record. I just enjoyed watching Josh McCouga. So let's talk about round number one. The round number one ends 10-10. Both teams tied after round number one. It looked like Josh McCouga and Greg were kind of carrying the weight of their teams there in round number one. What was your analysis, Chris Clark?
Well, look, you're looking at this round number one, and Greg really kind of killed it. Like, usually with the Real Rejects, they are kind of laughed at as kind of like the people that you go against and you expect to lose all the time. But yeah, and I remember they actually went up against like top 10, I think, in the Ultimate Schmoedown. They lost, but they still put up a good game. And for the first round, Greg really wanted to win this. You could tell he really wanted to win this. Yes, the Wildberries were having a blast and they were joking, but Greg himself was putting up a great fight. John was putting up a great fight. And even in the opening monologues where they were rapping, they actually knew what they wanted to do, and they kind of had that power and that charisma to actually go and do it in round one. So I feel like with round one, it really worked for their favor. But at the same time, I think Greg himself was kind of exceeded everybody's expectations in the end. I think even though it didn't wind up the way they wanted, it kind of worked out for the live environment itself.
Yeah, and it just kept everything light and fun, and this match went by very fast.
Yeah,
it was very fast paced. There was a lot of entertainment there. Now correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't there an almost challenge in round number one?
There was an almost challenge. He did. He almost considered a challenge, and I wish that, like, they kind of did it because
it was for a horror movie.
It was for a horror movie, yes. But I feel like with what the Real Rejects did, they challenged over and over again, and they succeeded. And I feel like had that happened and that gone through, things might have been different because this was still a 1 or 2 point game at the end, so anything could have happened, and it would have been smart.
Yeah, no, anything could have happened, but they didn't go for the challenge there. They backed up off it. Mark Ellis even points out he probably would have lost that challenge. So, I don't know how much of the game would have been affected, but I'm one of those guys. I think I figured out, Chris. I kind of like the drama. I like when someone challenges. It just adds another layer to the Movie Trivia Schmoedown that wasn't there prior. It's like, what, man, everything can happen, And I think that was this match, though, it just continues to be fun. Let me talk about round number two real quick. Wildberries finished 10. They get 10 points in this round. I think a couple were off. There were a couple steals, I do believe.
Yeah, there were
right?
a couple steals.
Or attempts, at least attempts at steals, yeah. And the Real Rejects finished with 7. Here's what I was kind of surprised at. Real Rejects get comic book movies. They seemed confident in getting that category and then did not do so well in comic book movies.
No, they didn't. And I feel like because the comic book movies category comes up a lot, and we see that a lot with the Movie Trivia Schmoedown, that if you get a category over and over again, Chris Galiski and his Crushing writers have to delve deeper and deeper and deeper into that content. So, like, I don't know if they expected a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles question in a comic book movie category. And when Take Three was speaking to Greg and John for the summit that aired this weekend, you also look at Greg saying that he would have respun. They wanted to respin, and I feel like it would have been in their best interest to respin, because had they done that, they probably could have had this game in the bag, because they really wanted to win, and they kind of, round two wasn't good for them whatsoever.
Round two was just atrocious, and I think at one point there was another funny moment where I think there was the question was something like who was the first person to speak, or who's the first character to speak to the Silver Surfer in Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer. That's a deep cut, man. That's like, wow. Not only do you have to see the movie, you have to see the movie probably a couple times to pick up on that, just to like, oh man, who was it? You know, because I thought it was the Invisible Woman, which I think was the guess. And then I was like, oh, no, it was Dr. Doom in my head. And then it was like, oh, no, it was, as Josh McCouga calls him, the Flaming Torch.
And it would have been the human, and yeah, and that was one of the challenges that they won. The Flaming Torch was actually the Human Torch, and I feel like with the whole that's some inner geekdom shit.
I was, you know, I think one of them made a comment to the effect of, you know, we thought this was going to be kind of MCU, DCEU, and it wasn't. And this is another thing you got to remember in the Movie Trivia Schmoedown is that, like you said, when you get these categories, comic book movies, everyone always gravitates to it. We always say, oh, yeah, comic book movies, I got this one in the bag. And then you have questions like, yeah, what Western star played Pa Kent in 1978 Superman? And you're like,
I didn't know that one. Yeah,
I didn't know that one either. You know, when the multiple choice came out, I was like, oh, it's got to be the Ford guy. But, you know, that's another example of a deep pull, a deep cut from Chris Skaliski, just because that category comes up all the time. And then we saw the Wildberries. They got comedies, which is definitely a strong suit of theirs. They get the first three correct. They go multiple choice on the fifth question, don't come up with the answer, and then they don't get any points on the sixth. And that left the round there 10-7, 10 points for the Wildberries. So now they're up 20-17 to the Real Rejects going into round number 3. Why don't you walk us through, Chris Clark, a little bit of round number 3 and how it all wrapped up?
Well, look, Josh McCouga and Elliot Dewberry really got into their characters and who they were during this performance. This is a prime example of knowledge, because as you said, they did get their first 3 questions correct. They had the knowledge there, and they had the personality there to do it. They baby stepped their way through it, but they did it, and they did it with class, and they did it as you want to do for a theater production. They made this a show. I was surprised with them being ahead in the 3rd round. I felt like I thought that the game that the Real Rejects were playing was really good, and it was really their game to lose at that point because of the because of the challenges because of everything that they were doing and how determined they were. I never saw the Real Rejects as determined as they were for this match. And it just didn't pay off for them during even the Wildberries round, because you could see it in their face. Greg and John knew exactly what their answers were. They knew every answer that was coming up, and they couldn't do anything about it because they got most of the questions. So Wildberries exceeded our expectations there, and yeah, they brought the passion and they brought the power.
Got the dub. They got the dub. The Wildberries Team of the Year. Give them the award right now. Retire. All they got to do is they don't even have to work again. They've won the match. Retire on top. Come on now. You're the Wildberries, the Wild Man, Josh McCouga, Elliot Dewberry. I just think this was a great way to start, you know, the live match, you know, because obviously this show was split into 2, but it was all one, you know, when it was done. And I think this was a good way to set it up. And then you had your main event with John Rocha and JTE, which obviously we're going to get into. The Outlaw is here. He'll be here momentarily. We're going to be talking to the Outlaw, or Frank Janisch and Chris Clark will be talking to the Outlaw about this match. But Chris, anything, I know we kind of walked through it rather quick, and it felt like that's how the match went. It was very fast-paced.
It was and it was over before you kind of knew it, because look, the round 3, there's really nothing to really talk about per se, as John and Greg put up the good fight, and I felt like Josh milking the moment, being in that moment when they actually, with the was it Elliot who said that the answer in the whatchamacallit, the horn into the microphone, and it won the game. That all was great. That was all theater. They all collectively made a great stage play. And to do that with this ensemble, all 4 of these competitors should be commended for that. Yes, the Wildberries wound up on top, and that kind of negates the whole 0 and like 36 they were aiming for. Like, now they have to figure out a new bit. But besides that, I feel like the bit aside, all 4 of these competitors, I can't wait to see it again, and they both want to face the Kingsmen apparently. So yeah, I hope that works out for them.
Well, we will see. what happens if we get to see the Wildberries and the Kingsmen. But, you know, there were a lot of other things that happened, Chris Clark. There were some cut scenes, some very special things that went down, some big storyline points. So I think we got to bring in the stat man right now. We got to get Frank Janisch in here, even if it's for a little bit. Apparently, we're going to be Skyping him in from the doldrums in his training facility where he is getting ready for the Rundown Schmoedown that's going to go down, the fatal four-way match between myself, Frank Jinga Janisch, Aaron Titanium Turner, and Paul Wolf. That's going to be going down here very soon. Momentarily, we're going to be releasing a date then. But let's get Frank on. Let's get Jinga Janisch on. And let's talk about these big storyline points that happen in these two matches before we go to that interview with John Rocha. Let's get Frank on right now. Well, Frank Janisch, we have to talk about something that is pretty crazy. There are a lot of, not only was the live show awesome, and, you know, you're getting ready for your big interview with the Outlaw John Rocha coming up right after this segment, but a lot of things happen on this in the cutscenes, in the storylines of the show, if you will. You know, we had Christian Harloff, the kind of commish. That's my new nickname for him, by the way, the kind of commish, Christian Harloff.
Yeah.
He was on here and he said, you know, hey, yo, don't worry, more storylines are coming. Well, boy, was he correct, because a lot of seeds were dropped throughout these two live show episodes. I guess let's talk about the first one first. The first thing that we saw was on the Real Rejects Wildberries match where we saw kind of this weird, it looked like, okay, so boom, it opens up. It looks like it's the front of the studio. Thad and Christian are coming out of the studio, trying to help each other out, do something. And then they get into this talk with one another about, hey, Christian's kind of like to Thad, hey, come on, man, give it up. It's been 6 months. It's time for me to, you know, resume my duties as commissioner. And then Thad starts talking about paperwork and starts talking about the contract, starts talking about questionable calls from the kind of commish Christian Harloff. What did you think about this here, Frank?
Yeah, the one thing that I found interesting here was that Christian's kind of passing play about not backing him up or coming up with the decisions concerning like the respin, you got the shower wolves mess. So he's kind of looking at Thad saying, hey, you know, you're the commissioner and I'm taking the brunt of all of this. It really should be kind of you. It's funny that Thad keeps going back to this fine print in the contracts that Christian somehow didn't read or can't find. I don't know which. It's an interesting way to have this kind of storyline between Christian and Thad. I really don't know where this is going, because Christian did challenge Thad to a match, and then Thad says, no, this is the part of the contract. I'm just kind of wondering where this is all going.
Yeah, you know, sometimes, you know, when I'm thinking about wrestling, you're looking on like, what's the payoff going to be, right? When Vince McMahon and Stone Cold Steve Austin were going at it back in the 90s, you knew the payoff would eventually be Stone Cold would get his hands on Vince McMahon and open up a can of whoop ass. And I'm just trying to figure out what is going to be the payoff here, because if there's no match, if there's going to be no altercation inside the Schmoedown ring between Christian Harloff and Thad Williams, what is going to happen? And eventually, like every contract eventually runs out. So there's going to be, you know, at least a stay of execution there for a little while. That contract's going to expire. And are we going to just go ahead?
Yeah, I think when we had Thad on, didn't he say till May, I think? Isn't that?
He said something originally about May, but now he's saying with all these questionable calls from the kind of commish Christian Harloff.
Yeah.
He, you know, it sounds like there might be some sort of an extension, you know, or maybe there's going to be a board of directors meeting or something, and they're going to vote Christian off. I don't know. It's really interesting what's going to happen. Let me ask you this, Frank. What would you like to happen?
I don't know, to tell you the truth. I really don't know. It's fun to watch, and I guess that Christian's not the commissioner. Thad is, and you can. But I mean, how long can this go on? I do not know. Without any kind of resolution or, you know, resolution, whatever the word I'm trying to say. I don't
Resolution's
know.
right. It's okay.
Yeah, right, okay.
It's just
okay.
that Chicago and public school education over there, but it's fine.
Yeah, I wish I could defend that, but I won't. Yeah, so yeah, I can't. What are we gonna see happen here? Collision during? I don't know.
You know what I would like to see? I'd like to see something to where, there is like that board of directors meeting where they call Christian into the boardroom and they say, you know what, we've evaluated your moves and your calls as of late, and we are going to grant Thad Williams full, power in commissioner, and then let Christian fight from behind. Have him bar him from the building. Bar him from the Schmoedown, and then have him fight back to get into it.
I kind of have like this idea of a social network thing kind of going on where it's like Zuckerberg with
yeah,
and like the other guy, I forget his name, played by Andrew Garfield,
Edward,
and it's kind of like
something?
Something.
Edward Sanchez or something like that.
I don't know, but it's like he's getting kicked out and he's gonna lawyer up and all this stuff. We could. People have talked about, or have talked about in the past about the trial of JTE. We haven't seen, let's see a trial for the true commissioner. That might be interesting. I don't know.
A trial of the true commissioner would be great. It would be better than the made-for-TV film with Bill Bixby, The Trial for the Incredible Hulk. But I think that I just like, to me, I don't know why, just in television, in wrestling, in the Schmoedown, I like these power struggles between guys. I like to see who's going to be the boss. I don't know why. I've always liked the authority figure conflicts, whether that's back in the Invasion angle where Vince brought in WCW and ECW, and then it was all an Invasion, and Stephanie was ECW, Shane was WCW. Like, I like that stuff. I've always have. So this is a very compelling storyline for me.
I would kind of like to see factions within the Schmoedown really show to take sides for a commission. I could see Lions Den and like the Viper Squad going with Thad, and then the Four Horsemen and the Five Club going with Christian, and
it'd be like WCW NWO. It'd be exactly what it'd be.
Maybe this is where we're going, and it's just a slow build. I don't know.
I like a slow burn.
Sure.
That payoff sometimes is a big deal. So we'll have to see where it goes. I'm very interested in it. Let's talk about another cutscene, though. Speaking of Thad Williams, coming into the second match, the JTE Outlaw match, we see Emma Fife. Speaking of the Fife Club, she comes in the door and she's like, "Hey, Thad, I've been thinking about this #1 contendership thing. As you know, I won the Manager Bowl. It's spectacular. How does it work?" And then he explains that if it's an Inner Geekdom, you can challenge anyone in Inner Geekdom, and if you beat them, you get the shot at Jason Inman. If it's in tags or on teams, anyone in the top 5, you pick them, you beat them, you get a shot at the Patriots. And then when it came to the singles championship, anybody in the top 10 they can challenge, and if they beat them, they get the shot at Sam I Am Levine. And then Emma was like, "Okay, well, I think I'm going to have my decision here pretty soon." And then that's kind of the end of the scene.
Right.
Where did you think she was leaning here? Because this is what I thought. I thought, okay, it's going to be Shire Wolves going against maybe a Top That or a MODOK or a Critically Acclaimed or an Above, something like that, to get the shot at the Patriots. That's where I was leaning to. Where were you leaning toward?
Yeah, I think initially when the Shire Wolves joined Emma Fife, in that cutscene way back a few weeks ago, I was like, oh, they're signing up. They're going to get this #1 contender spot for the teams. And that's initially where my mindset was going. And then you hear the talk of they want to earn their way. The Shire Wolves want to earn their way to the top. So I was like, okay, well, they're not going to take the #1 contender. So they're going to give Rachel another crack. And then Rachel has been saying, I'm going to take a little break from singles and concentrate on Inner Geekdom and being a teammate with Clark. So I was like, well, that just leaves Draco, I guess. But the one person that never crept into my mind, well,
I guess we should get to it, right? I mean, let's talk about it. Tell the folks what that next big cutscene was.
Yeah, so we start off on Emma Fife, and we're probably assuming she's talking to Rachel, and she's like, "I'm giving the #1 contender spot to you," and we pan over, and it's Clark, and it's a little great reveal. Nothing huge, nothing extravagant, but it's just a nice little tiny reveal. I like the way they did it and pulled it off. And Clark is a little, humbled and taken aback a little bit, but now she's got to come up with someone to face in the top 10 rankings for the number one contender match, which I think the way this works is pretty interesting, because I was thinking about it. I was like, well, we got Snyder, McQueenie, Rocha now, and who else am I missing? And
as far as is in the top 10,
like the top. Well, I mean, like the top players who are vying for that number one contender spot right now. So it's kind of just kind of just a big mishmash of players fighting for that number one contender spot. It's a weird way to get there, and so I did not know how long she would have to wait to find out a number one contender. But now she can pick anyone she wants in the top 10, and it's still. I've seen some comments already saying, pick up the lower end of the players like Stacy or Kalinowski. I do not know anyone in the top 10 is going to be an easy match. I mean, certainly you could say there are tougher matches with a Rocha or a Snyder or what have you, but anyone like Kalinowski, Stacy, we've seen Stacy have some pretty good performances. She's, and no one thought
Mark Ellis.
Clark would happen. So, that's why they're in the top 10. They're all very good. Sure, some are better than others, but I still think you're going to get a quality match, a high quality match, whoever she picks from the top 10. So your guess is as good as mine who she picks.
We've always said, or not always, but recently, especially when we had her on here last week, we were talking about Rachel Cushing would be the first competitor from the Schmoedown, female competitor from the Schmoedown, to grab the brass ring and become the singles champion in the league. Man, Clark Wolf's been on a warpath, and she's been really about her Schmoedown lately. Especially when you saw how quickly she pulled the trigger when it came to that challenge against Dagnino and the Charlie's Angels question. I did not want to be anywhere near Clark Wolf at that moment. She looked like she was ready to knock somebody out. And if the challenge didn't go her way, like Booker says, she'd be whooping somebody's ass right then and there. And Clark Wolf looks like she can throw hands. I'm just saying. I think she can throw hands. I really do. I think Clark Wolf, mark it now, telestat it, fax it, whatever you got to do. Mark my words. Clark Wolf will enter that number one contenders match, win that number one contenders match, and whoever the champion is at that time, if it's still the inglorious one, Sam Levine, she will defeat Sam Levine, and she will be the champion. She's somebody who learns from her mistakes, who's always studied, gotten better as the game goes on, with a great natural knowledge base there, and we've seen her in championship positions before, so I think that she is primed and ready for this match, and I think it's going to happen. I think she's going to be the champ.
Go back and listen to what Rachel said about Clark. She's really in tune to the strategy of the game. Yeah. And so you damn well know whoever she picks, she's going to have some sort of strategic edge or some strategy going into that match that perhaps her opponent may not have thought about far enough down the line to figure out, how to approach Clark, how to play that match. But, that's why, and you're right, Clark has learned from previous matches and circumstances. Rachel talked about how Clark learned about not being aggressive enough in certain situations, being with the Wolves of Steel, and bringing that into their debut match against Lions then. So, I cannot wait to see this new reinvigorated Clark Wolf in a singles setting. We've seen what she looks like already in the team setting, and that's quite scary.
Brother.
There's a stat I put out there a couple of weeks ago. She's gone 7 out of 8 in 4 straight matches in the first round in the team setting. So let's see if it transfers over to the singles. I think it will. I mean, now she's doing a podcast where she's covering a movie from the AFI Top 100. Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of somewhat how Top 10 has been able to gain a resurgence doing the Top 10 show again. I wonder if the same effect can be had on Clark Wolf. We'll see.
We're gonna see. I'm excited for it, and she definitely has, really paid attention to strategizing and working on her strategy, like you said, or as the great 43rd president of the United States, George W. Bush once said, she's got good strategery.
Strategic, yes.
And so I'm looking forward to Clark Wolf.
But can she dodge shoes? That's what we need to know.
Can she dodge shoes? Well, you know what? As they said one time, Frank, fool me once, shame on you. Well, you just can't fool me again. That's pretty much what it comes down to.
Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. That's how it goes.
Yeah, well, yeah, and President Bush famously.
Oh yeah.
Didn't remember it. Yeah. He goes, you just can't fool me again. So that's what's going to happen with Clark Wolf. You're not going to be able to fool her again. So, I mean, crazy cutscenes here for the live Movie Trivia Schmoedown episodes. And I think that a lot of people who may have been complaining about not a lot of storyline continuity going through the early parts of the season, I think this definitely satiated their taste for that. Wouldn't you say, Frank?
Oh, absolutely. Because now we're going to talk about who's Clark going to pick. What is, if she does win, she's going to face him again for the second time. Will she beat him in a 5-round setting as opposed to her first match as a 3-round setting? So, yeah, there's a lot going on here, and Shire Wolves are still paving their way to the top. You got Rachel, who's I'm curious to see when she's going to make her Intergeekdom debut this season. What's going to happen with Mark and Draco? Is he going to get back in the singles mix? That's going to be interesting. So, or does he pick up somebody else to be a teammate? I don't know. There's a lot going on there, and what happens? Oh, and then we should talk about a little bit story-wise. 4 Horsemen. Rocha chooses 4 Horsemen. We get into that a little bit later with Rocha and all that. We try to get it out of him. Who's the rest of the 4 Horsemen? He wouldn't budge, but I mean, exactly. It's going to be, it's supposed to be better than what was previous. How do you top that? I cannot wait to find that out.
How do you top that? That is the question.
Yeah, they're right. Yeah, I see it there. I see what you did.
I don't know. But yeah, so I mean, but you know what? I guess though, maybe you don't know. Anything can happen in the Movie Trivia Schmoedown. Hey, yeah, right. I mean,
friends.
Yeah. So I guess though, without further ado, Frank, speaking of the Outlaw himself, the former singles champion, former tag champion, we should get to your exclusive interview with Mr. John the Outlaw Rocha.
Yeah.
Why don't you preview it for the fans?
Well, as you might notice, it looks like I might be in a bunker right now.
It looks like you're trying to run away from zombies.
And
is what it looks like.
No, well, I'm actually in my Rundown Schmoedown training bunker right now, prepping for a big day.
Yes.
And,
which is coming up, by the way, gentlemen. We're going to be announcing a date soon.
Yeah.
So I can kick your ass, Janisch.
Well, that's why I'm down here to make sure that doesn't happen. And I'm studying up. I got like 17 screens right now in front of me. There's all movies going on. All got subtitles on. But,
like Rain Man.
Right. So, we talked to Rocha about the live event, the match itself, what was his thoughts during the match, what he felt afterwards, and how he enjoyed the experience. So, here we go.
Here we are with John Rocha, the winner of JTE Rocha from the live event. John, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, and I'll ask you to call me the Outlaw John Rocha, not just John Rocha, because that's who whipped JT's ass on at the Schmoedown Live event. It was the Outlaw.
The Outlaw, sorry there, Mr. Outlaw. It's funny you say that because I believe in your very first appearance on the Rundown was like episode 3. I did the exact same thing, and then you just did the exact same thing you just did, and correct me, so obviously I haven't learned. All right.
Come on, numbers.
Right. So, the live event, first of all, let's get into that whole atmosphere, what it was like in the theater. How did it get your juices flowing? Was it nervous? Were you excited? What was going on in your head before this matchup?
I was definitely nervous. I mean, I think when you're going to do this, when you're doing this in front of 10, 15, 20 people, it's a whole nother ballgame than when you're on a stage and your knowledge is there for everybody to see. And I remember, like, we were like, how many tickets did we sell? How many people were going to be there? It was like a fluctuating number. And then when you heard the crowd the first time, when I saw the lineup outside, when I was showing up a little bit late to the theater, and I saw the crowd, they were yelling Outlaw. They were yelling, it was like so great. So then when you get inside the theater and you start hearing the rumblings, I mean, I don't know if you've seen those movies of, rock stars or whatever, and you can hear the crowd down underneath in the green room. We could hear them clapping and getting into it, and Christian and Mark obviously did a great job of psyching them up and getting them ready. So, but there is nothing like walking out there. And I tell you, for me, I was nervous and I wasn't sure about how I was going to do against JT because remember, I was coming off that tag team match. When he said the respin and the crowd booed, everyone booed, all of a sudden all my nerves went completely away and I realized that this was my crowd, like they were with me, and I completely settled into who I was and I was laser focused in a way I hadn't been in quite some time.
Now, would you say this was a big match for you, or was it just another match aside from the theatrics? Because you're trying to get your singles campaign this year off to a good start and trying to get back the belt. So do you view every match as a big match because they're so limited, or is it just let's take it one match at a time here?
In all our previous matches, in tag team matches, he had beat me, and in the joke of movie fights, he had beaten me, and so his constant narrative was, you can't beat me, you can't beat me. And you know what? That creeps into your mind a little bit. You start to worry. Is it the fact that they just have this combination that I can't unlock? Are they the one team or the one single or the two singles guys that I just cannot beat? And so that does creep into your mind. And so a lot of that was just about preparing myself mentally for what was going to happen. I knew this was a huge match also because it's the Schmoedown Live Event. You want to put on a good show. You don't want to get like TKO'd. You don't want in the main event. You want to have people like on the edge of their seats. The back and forth we were having in that first round was fantastic. So, and I could sense the crowd. And all the comments coming out. We were doing our promos. You could hear the comments from the crowd.
Now, were you backstage for the Wildberries Real Rejects, or were you somewhere in the crowd?
Oh, yeah. If you know me, you know I was there the whole time. And I like to take it all in. And I was backstage in the wings watching the Wildberries and the Real Rejects match, watching through the monitor. But I purposely didn't get dressed until they got into the third round. And that's when I go into my preparations. I go into the things that I do to get ready to walk out on that stage. And so for me, watching the match was a great distraction, but I was pacing back. And JT and I were pacing back and forth around each other. So like there was that, sense of competition amongst each other, like two lions just walking around each other, just wait until they have to slam into each other and fight. So it was really great. And, and of course, Snyder was doing his tactics to try to throw me off from the beginning.
Oh, wow. Okay, so I real quick, I just want to ask, though, while you're watching the Wildberries Real Rejects, does that get you amped up for what you might expect when you get out on stage? How does that factor into your psyche, your preparation, when you hear the crowd going crazy? Because they put on a hell of a show in that match. Did that come into your mind and say, I should put on more of a show than I was anticipating, or are we just going to let things unfold the way they would?
Yeah, if you know me or if you've heard me in conversations, I'm a very organic person. I kind of ride the waves of whatever I sense is happening, and the Wildberries and the Real Rejects, that's a whole nother type of energy that they bring to a Schmoedown match. I can't match that energy. They have certain personalities that really lend themselves, and the crowds love their personalities for the funny, inventive, interesting way that they come down. I mean, Greg without his shirt on, Josh, the t-shirt cannon, all that stuff. That's not something I would do. That's not something that's in my personality. That's what's so great about the Wildberries and the Real Rejects is those guys are naturally funny guys. But for me, it had nothing to do with the Outlaw in my mind. Like whatever was going to happen for me when I walked out on that stage or before I walked out on that stage, and that's how it went down.
All right, now let's get into the match. But first things first is the intros, the player promos. This is a brand new kind of setting where it's he's right. He's like 10 feet from you now, and he's spewing his stuff. You're spewing your stuff. What was that dynamic like? Because usually when you're in the studio, you go off to this one part of the studio and record, and then you walk in. But now you're both right there. And sometimes I guess in the studio you could be, but you're both right there on the stage with the energy of the crowd. What was it like? I mean, you came out, you crouched, you played to the crowd a little bit, and you got the spotlight on you. What was that feeling like when you were going through your promos?
The way it was pitched to me by Christian was the WWE style. And that's what appealed to me, having been a fan of professional wrestling since I was 10 years old. So to me, to have the opportunity to walk out on the stage, to have the spotlight on you, on a promo, and I think it was a blessing that JT went first. Because it really got me into the place I had to be in to do that promo. And that whole promo, completely impromptu, completely off the cuff. Nothing. I didn't plan a thing because I'm like, I know I can talk extemporaneously. The thing is, can I be in the right mindset, and can I ride the wave of the crowd to know what to say? And when JT was doing his stuff, if you watch the live event again, you'll see me. If they have a shot of me, I turn my back to him to stare out because he was cracking me up with some of the stuff he was coming up with, and it was good shit. But it was getting me hyped because there's nothing a competitor loves more than a fellow competitor who's just as hyped as he is. And I love that one person yelled out when JT was bragging about how he'd always beaten me. He goes, "Not in singles." That was great to hear. That it got me really like kind of dialed in, and so that when I spun around and I was just going to go down and then go right back up, and then I heard the crowd. And when the spotlight came on to me, you could hear the crowd just start cheering like crazy. And so for me, I was like, I had to ride that. Like I've seen The Rock do so many times, or Hogan do so many times, where he hears the crowd doing what they're doing, and then he like lets them go for a little bit. And so I stood back up and kind of really took it in, like drank it in. And then I slowly went back down, and then I just waited for that right moment when the crowd cheer just got just a little bit lower volume, and then I said Outlaw Nation and just really could sense them come with me, and so it was great. And just riding that, I couldn't tell you what I said. But I think you could tell there was more than just a performer there. I was angry from what had happened at the top 10 match, and you could tell I was determined to beat him, and I was not going to let him or the Lion's Den or anybody deter me or distract me or mentally unbalance me so I wouldn't be focused to beat him.
Chris, these promos, when you saw them, I don't know, could you sense the energy through the video? I mean, I was fortunate enough to be there. Could you sense what kind of energy was going on in that room when the promos were going on?
It was perfect stage theater. It was great that, like, what actually JT did, from what I saw with JTE, I think he kind of in his head kind of scripted some things out, and it kind of came off to me like a Shakespearean monologue in a sort of sense. I don't know, putting Shakespeare and JT together is the smartest thing to say on something here, but it came off like that. And John, you ate up the stage. Like, you looked like you were a rock star, coming down and feeding off the audience, and what you were saying, what you were protruding, was actually giving the audience some more oomph to give a good prelude to the match at hand. Because when we get into the match, it might have been a little anticlimactic. We'll get into it, but the setup and everything was fantastic. It really, really was, and I felt like the promos are some of the best we've ever seen.
Thanks, man.
Now, we get through round 1. It's all tied up at 6. He misses, though, his first question. When that happened, it was the How to Train Your Dragon question.
Yeah.
When he misses and you answer correctly, did that calm you even down even more, or were you just, again, taking it question by question? How did that go?
Well, I tell you, that first round was the thing is, what people don't know is I had a conversation with Frankie Numbers, and I said, Frankie, in the green room, I said, Frankie, tell me the truth. He said, if you can get out of the first round with a little bit of a lead, you might have a shot. And the fact that we came out of the first round tied made me like, oh man, I don't know what's going to happen now. Whatever small piece of because I went up on him, I think 2. I went up on him by 2, and then he climbed back and we tied up to end that first round. So already there was in my mind, like, it was just like, oh man, what's going to happen here? I don't know. And so, but I had this superstitious thing about putting my mask on my water bottle. And for me, I just needed that to happen. It took my mind off being distracted by anything he was doing or the line. You know, as Tom ran up, Jeff ran up, they all did their things. But I had talked to Matt Nost. Matt deserves a extra special shout out from me for showing up and being there to represent Top 10, to be by my side, really helped me. And then also run up there, and Dale the Dude as well, running up there and getting rid of those guys for me, because I had spoke to them ahead of time. I said they're going to do all their tactics. I need people in my corner that are going to do their tactics back to.
Dale literally jumped a railing because he was a little bit up more on the seating. He was right behind me, and he literally jumped over the railing and just ran up on stage when that moment happened. I wanted to ask, you were, about when I told you in the green room, if you get a little bit of lead, and then that didn't happen. I was in my mind thinking, oh crap, I was not thinking about what I had told him. I don't want it to get into his head, but we all know it worked out in the end.
It was.
Yeah. So, was there anything in that first round that caught you by surprise in terms of questions, or was it just because a lot of it were asking for just actor and actresses' names, and that's pretty, surface level stuff. So, were you surprised? I don't know. Did you think the first round was fairly easy compared to matches in the past?
I think the first round was a good first round. There were a couple of easy questions, but other questions were a little more difficult. Obviously, we would have gotten all of them. And the thing with the good ape, or the bad ape, I didn't know he was called Bad Ape because he's such a kind of a meek guy in the movie, or meek ape in the movie. So I didn't think he was Bad Ape. I thought it was one of the gorillas. So I couldn't remember who had voiced one of the gorillas, and I was wondering if maybe it would come to me, and it didn't. And that's one of the lessons of the Schmoedown. Sometimes it's just better to guess with the only knowledge you possibly have, because you never know if you might be right. And so I should have wrote down Steve Zahn. Just like it wouldn't have cost me anything if I was wrong. I wasn't going to put anything down anyway. Yeah. I should have just put something down, take a chance. But yeah, sometimes you have to learn a lesson more than once in the Schmoedown, and that's kind of my lesson. Sometimes I have to write stuff, no matter what it is. I have to write it down just in case. When I had that triple threat match with Dan Murrell, I knew that Patrick Stewart was the only person in the green room that I remembered, and I didn't put it down. I just didn't even guess. And those are the things that you just have to, because if you're not going to put anything down anyway, you might as well put something down. And the only person you know in the movie, you never know if you might be right. But yeah, I learned that lesson again there at the Schmoedown, and we came out of that thing tied, and it was nerve-wracking.
To say the least. When JTE would get an answer right and you got it wrong, the crowd would boo him, and then he get it right or you got it wrong, you wouldn't get booed. What do you think maybe that possibly got to JT? I don't want to speak for him or put thoughts in his brain about what that was like, but do you think that could have had an impact perhaps on any other kind of player?
I don't know, maybe. The thing is, I've been in the live theater. I'm an actor, so being in front of a stage with 250 people or whatever, it's not something that necessarily unsettles me in terms of experience. I've done it before, so I relied on that. And maybe JT got thrown off, maybe he got nervous, but when he spun Stallone Sly Arnie, he was as confident as can be. He strutted around the stage.
Yeah, he did.
Had it in the bag, and he told me this afterwards. He's like, "I thought I had you in the bag. As soon as that hit, I thought I had you in the bag." And so that lets you know that no matter what happened that first round, JT was still dialed in. No matter what the crowd was doing, JT still felt confident that he was going to beat me.
I would suspect that would be the case, but I would just like to know your thoughts. Chris, the first round, man, all tied up. What were you thinking about the round and how things were unfolding?
Well, look, JTE kind of he had, you talk about round one, he really, really, really kind of underperformed as well as John did, but you have to look at it from this point of view. JTE coming off of kind of all the wins that the Patriots have had, it might have gone a little to his head, so to speak, just because of how much he's played and how much he's won. Maybe he kind of was a little bit overconfident. I mean, that happens. But then you look at John, and he just was determined. I think the whole controversy that all the fans were having and that talk amped up the atmosphere. And I think that was the magic of theater. That's all the lights aligning just right for John himself, and that was just a theater moment. That was the atmosphere of the theater moment itself, and I don't think you could duplicate that. Going into round two, when he got Sly and Arnie, I too, when I was watching that, figured, hey, this is probably going to be a pretty bad thing for John. But going into it, I realized, it's getting to JT's head, and when John rolled what he rolled, which was his strength, Westerns, the tables turned and we started to see where it was heading. But I think overall, this match, this is a great example of fan reaction kind of affecting the gameplay, so to speak, because of the atmosphere involved, if any of that made sense. But yeah, I think that's what happened.
I think if I could chime in there, I think, Chris, you're onto something there.
Yeah.
I think when JT flubbed it the first time and actually lost 2 points on a steal, I think he really started to doubt himself and was concerned, because I think people can sense when I'm dialed in. No matter who plays me, I think they can sense when I'm dialed in. And it can be intimidating. Like, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I know when I'm dialed in, I can be real intimidating and determined and steamroll and get to that victory. And we saw it with Top That. You saw it with Mark Riley when I was losing. And with Mance, the second time I played Mance, he got that movie release dates, remember? And I stayed focused. When he spun Sly and Arnie, I just stayed focused. I didn't let it rattle me. I just was like, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. I've got to spin here. Maybe I can steal. Did I think I was going to steal 2? I had no idea I was going to steal 2 points, or 4 points rather, 2 questions off him. But, JT flubbed. And when he said 6, I was like, I can't believe he said 6 man. I couldn't believe it. And when he said whatever he tried to mangle with Eliza Dushku. And whatever he said there.
Dooku or something.
Count Dooku.
Leisha Duke or something. Yeah.
And I heard Jen Sturger go, "Come on!" like really loudly in the crowd, which was hilarious. So to me, coming out, what could have been a terrible role for me was all of a sudden turned out to the possibility that I was thinking I could knock him out, especially when I spun Westerns. I've seen him come back on a number of times for the last year. So for me, when I spun Westerns, I was like, here we go, son. Let's make this happen. And yeah.
Yeah, when JTE gets Sly and Arnie, as much as I was looking at JTE's reaction, I was actually looking at your reaction to see how you would respond. I said, man, he got out of that round tied the first round. Now it's a big favorable spin for JTE. How are you going to react to that? You were composed, and then he misses the first one. You steal for 2 points. At that point, honestly, John, I'm sorry, Mr. Outlaw, I really thought that this match was going to go your way, because I know you're a good enough player to not give up any opportunities to the opposition in the second round. You very rarely ever do that. You always go to multiple choice, or you just know the question flat out. So when you stole that first one, I thought this is going to be an uphill battle for JTE in this round, because he got the second one correct, and then he missed the last 2. You only capitalized on that last question for 2 points. But then, you're right, you get Westerns, and I said, you could not have scripted this any better. You got the Real Rejects and the Wildberries match. That was phenomenal. Now you got this happening. This is, if Christian was writing this out, I don't think you could have written this any better. I think you got everything you could have wanted from both of these matches, especially yours. I think the most ideal outcome was for you to win on that kind of stage, and it's JTE, and I know he's a good sport about everything that the Schmoedown does, which he should be applauded for and commended, because they go through a lot of stuff being the Lion's Den. You nearly have a perfect second round. You get 7 of the possible 8 points. You don't give it any opportunities. You're going in there with a pretty sizable leader, up 17 to 8. And then were you kind of just waiting for your turn in the third round, or were you thinking, I don't know if he can get out of the third round, because he gets his first question right, but, what was your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts were, let's see what happens. Because the thing is, no matter what lead you have, you never know what the questions are. And the third round recently has not been so favorable to me. So I've been in a different place about third round, where when I was on my run, I felt nothing but confident. Now, recently, you take some losses, and it does rattle you a little bit. So for me, I was like, let's see what happens. That was the mentality. It was just like, let's just see how this plays out. I'm going to keep composed. Nothing is a given. Don't celebrate. And that's the thing. My mind was always just like this the whole time, because I just didn't want to do what happened in the tag team match, was lose my cool, break down, and cost us the match. And that's essentially what happened. When you look back 2 weeks later, or a few weeks later rather, it's like, well, I got flabbergasted and I lost it, and I didn't want to do that again against JT.
Mm-hmm. Real quick, I just want to go back to the second round when there was the third question. It was the answer was Rock Hudson.
Oh yeah.
You played it up. You played it up, right?
I really would love to finally dispel this rumor. I have never, nor have I ever, sat on an answer of a question for dramatic effect. I really haven't. The thing is that sometimes I think I know, but I hit these moments in matches where they feel like critical moments, and I don't want to mess it up. And so I sat there and I was like, is it? Because I thought it was Gregory Peck or Rock Hudson. I wasn't sure, because Gregory Peck also did a movie with John Wayne, and I wasn't sure which one it was. And I even stomped my boot on the stage to get my mind to kind of focus and dial in. And I said, yeah, you got to take chances in life. And that's my way of, like, when I say that stuff, it's my way of kind of like making myself take the chance. And I heard someone in the front row go, no, multiple choice.
Yeah, there's a lot of people. A lot of people were saying. I was wondering if that you heard that. So
I did. But I got to play my game my way, and I guessed Rock Hudson, and I felt that because I had a bit of a lead, I could take a chance as well. And when I got it right, I really couldn't believe it, especially when Christian delayed telling me I got it right. Like, I'm sure 9/10 of the crowd didn't know it was Rock Hudson. So like, if I'm going over to my mind, it's because I'm not alone in that.
All right, let's get back to the third round, Chris. Did you think Rocha had this in the bag? When did you think he had it in the bag? Before the third round? What were your thoughts?
Well, I actually think he had it in the bag after JT kind of flubbed a couple of his category questions, and I felt like the third round, usually has anybody ever recovered from a deficit like that? Was it 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, like a 4 or 5 point deficit?
Cody Miller did. Cody Miller did against JT,
you're right.
It
remember?
was a 6-point deficit is the
It was
largest.
a 6? Oh, okay.
Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, it's very uncommon, and I felt like it being live again, this isn't kind of the outcome maybe Christian or anybody kind of expected, because I think a TKO for a live setting is a little on the anticlimactic side.
Sure.
But that's fair. But the fact of the matter is, you guys didn't make it anticlimactic in the end. It actually felt like a full seasoned match. And even though, I saw JT kind of losing this, he still could have done something. He's JT for all we know, and it could have happened. It could be anybody's game, because Makuga, you can't count out any of the kind of loose ends. You can't even count out Dagnino in that situation. So I've said it on the Bibbs episode, and I'll say it again. It's like Mario Kart. It's just the third round, he could have gotten a star and buzzed to the first place line. Instead, he kind of got the bomb and blew himself up. If that's a good way to put it. I don't know.
All right, so John, Mr. Outlaw. I keep saying it, John. Okay, sorry. It's the Outlaw. It's the Outlaw. I'll get it right one of these days. You're victorious. It was a TKO. It's your second of your career. It's the second one in 3 matches. You did against Inman, and then sadly you lost to Levine. But now you play JTE. It's another TKO. It's funny because everyone thought the Wildberries would get TKO'd, and your match would go down to the last question. But that was the inverse here. You had to be a little surprised you TKO'd JTE.
Yeah, I was surprised, sure, but then again, by the same token, I wasn't surprised that I won. Once I dial in, and if I lose with no shame, but I was dialed in. And so usually in those matches, I win. And so I was a little upset that JT was trying to upstage my victory instead of letting me have that victory, but I should have known. It's the Lions Den. That's what they do. They're a bunch of dirty dogs. And so they did what they did. But when I got to do my post-match interview, that was really where I kind of let it all go. And, I'll be honest with you, Frankie and Chris, and this is true, Frankie and Chris, I was going to retire after the tag team match. That loss was so difficult to swallow. It is the most difficult loss I've ever had to swallow in the Schmoedown, because I really thought we had him. I really thought when we stormed back with Tarantino and I slammed the desk, I was like, let's do this. I really thought we had him, but I got too emotional. I lost my head, and I realized I wanted too much. When I want something too much, I can lose it because I steamroll it. And I felt like Dan and Riley have retired. Yeah. My contemporaries have retired. Maybe it's time I'm done, because it takes so much out of you to play these matches. And when people say, oh, it's just a movie trivia competition, I want to punch them in the face, because come and do this. Come and try and do what we're doing. and get the expectations of people behind you and get those messages of people tearing you apart on the internet or supporting you on the internet, you go endure that and then tell me it's just a movie trivia competition. It isn't. There's more to it, and we enjoy the drama of it, but we also pay for the drama of it emotionally sometimes. And so those are those things. And so I really was going to retire. But after the crowd cheered for the or booed the respin, after the crowd got me dialed in, after the crowd came with me on my promo, after I walked through when I came down, walked through the crowd, coming off of I was going to retire, knowing that I still got it was really a powerful moment for me. And that's why I said what I said to everybody. I said, all you young bucks, all you new faces, this old dog is still in the hunt, still in the game. I ain't done by a long shot. And I'm not. And I was reborn that night, like the Outlaw 2.0, man. I was reborn in that. I know who I am now in this competition. There's no face, no heel. I know who I am now in this competition, and that's who I'll be, win or lose. And so that's, sometimes you have to mature and grow up through a thing. Want that singles title, and so, but I gotta dispense with the Lion's Den first. That's my focus, and that's why I called out Snyder. And I meant what I said. You can start calling me the poacher because I'm gonna kill each of these guys and hang their pelts on my wall, and I mean it.
I think someone's gonna probably make that shirt. I can see it now. Just bloody pelts on the wall, hanging with the Outlaw right there. That'll be a #1 seller. PETA might have something to say about that, but when we get to that, yeah. I want to get to this Four Horsemen thing real quick.
Oh.
That was interesting because you just mentioned that you were gonna probably retire, but then you also have this Four Horsemen idea or deal or this machination in the background percolating. What's up with the Four Horsemen, man? What can we expect from the Four Horsemen? Who's in it? Just give us all. Just tell us right now.
I can't. I wish I could. I can't right now. But it came together right after the match, the tag team match, and right after my conversation with Christian. 2 or 3 people reached out and said, I don't want to see you leave this competition. You haven't had the support that you need to have in this competition. And we're all sick of the Lion's Den. We want to be on the Horsemen. Like we want to bring the Horsemen back. We want to ride with you against these assholes in the Lion's Den. And so I couldn't believe the people that called me. Well, if this all works out and we make the deals, then I'm going to bring the Four Horsemen back. And that was the thing. And so things are in the works right now. And I think the fans are going to be very surprised and very happy when they find out who the Four Horsemen or more than Four Horsemen that there's going to be coming down the pike. Let's just leave it at that, because that first iteration of the Four Horsemen was nice, but it wasn't strong enough, and I underestimated the line, and so now I got to get stronger competitors to come and be by my side, put on some cowboy hats, get on those horses and ride with me, take these dirty dogs down.
You kind of hurt Chris's feeling there because he's a big Bibbiani fan. So
not trying to hurt Bibbiani.
You heard about the Four Horsemen, Chris. What was going through your mind when that's brought up?
Well, look, I made no secret whatsoever. Bibbiani's my favorite competitor. Robert Myburnet's my second favorite, and I feel like the Four Horsemen were perfection when they were on it. The minute they left, I betrayed John, and that's where history was made. But look, I feel like I'm a biased mofo. I really am. So anybody who you replace Bibbiani and Burnett with, John, are not going to be superior. They're the 2 best players in the game. Bibbiani with the knowledge, and Rob with, in my opinion, his stage presence and charisma. And I love them. I love them both to death. But look, I actually am curious who you are going to bring on to, I think, the Horsemen. I am positive that we're going to probably get more than 4, I think, maybe, or just the 4. We don't know, but you know what? I am super, super excited for the future, and I cannot wait to see who John brings on so they can get decimated by critically acclaimed. It'll be great. It'll be amazing, but I can't wait. It's going to be a blast. Whatever happens.
And real quick, Chris, what did you think of the overall event, the 2 events overall? I mean, what did you think about what the would you come away with there?
The event itself was fantastic, and I can't wait for Christian to have more of these live events. He's gonna have more. He's already announced he's gonna have more, and the crowd ate it up. You just need people who can eat up the crowd with them, treat it like John did, like a rock concert, because essentially that's what it is. It's a rhythmic show that you need with an audience that can jump to the beat of your rhythm, and you rock that sucker. And I feel like the show as a whole was a huge success. You topped it off with Real Rejects versus Wildberries, which was a crowd favorite. You have this match, which was a crowd pleaser because John won and TKO'd the bad guy. You can't write stuff like that. So I feel like overall, Christian couldn't write a show as good as it was, and I can't wait for the future of it.
Yeah, John, what did you think when it was all said and done?
Yeah.
You got home, you're like, what did you think just happened that night? How are you feeling?
No, it's a great question, Frank. I think you read about these people who go and perform these incredible things, and they go home like to their house alone, and they sit there and they miss that. You know, and I don't want to overstate what we do, but you hear these famous athletes go, it's really hard. But what did Apollo say? When you're done, everyone's through chanting your name. Like, it's real quiet. It's real quiet, Rocky. It was real quiet, Balboa. When everyone's done chanting your name, you're just sitting there. And when you retire, it gets real quiet when you retire. And there's just something about hearing everybody. Like, it's insane to have 250 people screaming your last name. I just felt a sense of joy and peace and happiness that we got through it, that it came off as well as it did. Like, because Christian's my dog for over 20 years. So something that he, created and then asked me to be a part of, and I took it upon my shoulders to do my part to build it, to see it end up here in this live event and have it go as well as it did. I felt nothing but happiness for my friend and pride for all of us involved in the Schmoedown, because all of us, no matter from one victory or loss to a million victories and losses, we all built this thing, and to see it come off the way it did in the first live event, it was my honor to be part of it. It was my honor to be the main event, and to win that way, that they can't take that away. Frankie, that's another record you put in there.
There you go.
First singles champion in the Schmoedown.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, first singles winner, rather. Yeah.
Well, I have to say, my time being there at the live event, it was phenomenal. More than I could have ever expected. Great performances from everyone. It was so awesome to be. And Chris, you talk about it being a rock concert. I mean, that's exactly what it felt like. It was so, the lights, the music. The people were really into it. The fans came from all over. That's how passionate this fan base is for this game, for this show, for everyone that's competing, who has competed. And it's such an awesome thing to be on this journey with the fans and the competitors and Chris and everyone else does podcasts and all their admins from the Facebook community and all that. Just to be on this journey together, to see how this thing grows and how we can all grow together. And it really I felt like culminated right there on that night. Man, it was just, and I can't even imagine what it's like to hear your name being chanted like that and rallying the crowd up. It was really fun to be a part of, and I cannot wait for the next one to happen. I'm curious who's going to be on the card for that one. But John, I don't want to take up too much of your time anymore. Any parting words for Outlaw Nation out there?
Yeah. Thank you so much for supporting me through this whole thing and for being so positive after we lost that match, that tag team match. You guys brought me back to life, and then everyone who was there at that event from Outlaw Nation, like, thank you. Like, that's all I can say is thank you. Like, and what I said in the post-game interview was right. Every one of you owns a piece of this victory because you guys kept me level. You supported me. I could feel your support through the match. Just kept me in a good place and made my heart like very strong and very powerful. And I took care of the little one. Now I got to take care of the receding hairline one, the old one. I'm going to take out that Snyder, and then I'm going to whoop Tom Dagnino. I should probably take on Tom Dagnino and Ken Knapsack at the same time just to get rid of them. And then I get my shot at the title, because remember, I have to win 3 matches to get my shot at the singles.
It's true.
Sam Levine, enjoy that belt, Bubba. Sleep with that belt. Go to have lunch. Take that belt out to brunch. Give it some mimosas. Yeah. Do whatever you need to do, because that belt is coming home with me once and for all. I'm going to be a 2-time champion no matter what it takes. Snyder's dust in my way, and the third person after Snyder's dust in my way. But I want that belt. So all I can tell you is thank you, Outlaw Nation. Thank you for bringing me back. and for making me reborn.
All right, well, there it is. That's John the Outlaw Rocha. Thank you for your time. And now let's throw it right back to Brad.
Thank you, guys.
Well, that was the Outlaw John Rocha. A lot of things said. I'm sure the comments are on fuego. That's Spanish for fire. I'm practicing, by the way. I have to give a speech at the end of next month, all in Spanish, by the way. I'll see how that works out for me. But Chris Clark, interesting stuff. Comments made by the Outlaw. I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen with the 4 horsemen in the future. We try to get out of them there, or y'all did, and we'll see. I know he's going to slow play this one. He's keeping his cards close to his chest, but I'm excited to see what happens. And we're just now, what is it, 2 weeks away? Are we 2 weeks away? We are 2 weeks away from the free-for-all, and we are planning something very special for the free-for-all to do here on the Movie Trivia on the Schmoedown Rundown for the Movie Trivia Schmoedown. I mix that up all the time. It's just something that happens. Before we close out here, I just want to send off, I want to dedicate this episode to a family friend that I just found out hours before recording this. So sorry if I'm a little all over the place, but hours before recording this, I found out a family friend tragically passed away, and I had to attend his service at last minute. So I just want to give a shout out to Joe, and I want to, dedicate the show to him in his memory. And Chris, thank you for working around the schedules this week. Look forward to Suddenly Soundtracks. What do you have coming up for the show? What's up next?
For Suddenly Soundtracks, the show we're on Take Two Production, we go through a movie musical, song by song, to judge a movie solely based on the soundtrack it provides. We have Newsies coming out this week with All the Belts as Aaliyah Moore and Robert Parker. It's going to be fantastic. And I have this sucker right here coming at you on Suddenly Soundtracks soon for Walk the Line. It's going to be great.
Yes, we're going to be doing Walk the Line. I was jamming the soundtrack just a couple days ago in preparation, trying to get ready for Walk the Line, one of my favorite movies of all time. Make sure you follow us at Schmoedown RD on Twitter or Schmoedown Rundown on Instagram. Follow the new Movie Trivia Schmoedown Twitter profile at the Schmoedown. And you can join the group at the Movie Trivia Schmoedown Facebook group. For Chris Clark on the boards, for Jenga Janisch somewhere off in exile training for the Rundown Schmoedown, I am Brad Gilmore, and we will see you next week right here on the Schmoedown Rundown, brother. Dig it! Ooh, yeah! Yeah, but even Bibiani calls that out. He even said on the commentary, should have waited. Before even the competitors got to get the go ahead.
Can we talk about Bibiani at the desk? Holy crap!
God. Oh yeah, how do we bury this lead here?
Yes,
somewhere Chris Clark is just he's putting his nub on something.
Oh, you gotta cut that one. Cut that out. Cut that out. This is a family show, Brad. The hell are you talking about?
What the fuck? Like, come on, dude. I made a mistake. I meant to say I meant to say tip of the microphone.
Oh boy.
Oh my goodness! I did not expect that to be that funny.
Yeah, it is.
Oh
man. Oh, Brad needs a breather. Oh wow, look at that. He's got a.
Ooh.
So should I keep that in the edit or no?
I'm gonna leave it up to you, Chris. Whatever you think is best. All right. You can get chewed up for the edit, not me. If it goes sideways, yeah.
Yeah, I would put that one in there. I did not.
Well, it's out of context. So it's out of context. So yeah.
We'll post that one on the Instagram.
It's a Patreon exclusive.
That should be. Chris Clark's putting his nubs on things.
Oh,
God.
Oh my God.
Oh my. Wow.
I'm sorry, Chris.
And Brad just derailed us for like a good,
mid good conversation too.
Yeah.
2 minutes and 47 seconds.
Holy shit. Whew, okay. Nobody
So,
say a word.
Viviani at the desk.
All right, 5, 4, 3, 2. Yeah, how can... Shit. Okay, hold on. I can't.
Well, I thought we brought Brad on here to be a professional.
I know.
And, like,
I know.
This isn't what I signed up for.
This is supposed to be what
You
I
want Brian
do.
Davis back?
Yeah, really.
I think Chris Clark.
Okay.
Oh, God.
Chris Clark puts his nut on things.
Yeah, it was.
It was, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was more of
No, that's okay. Can I go with it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now, William Bibiani being on the desk. Fuck. Okay, hold on. 5, 4. 5.
Yeah.
I can't. Okay, ready?
Really well, you guys. This is going great.
5, 4, 3, 2. Now, Chris. Fuck. Okay, in 5. 4. I can't do it.
All right. We got it.
Okay. In
Right.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now, Frank, you were mentioning something about William Bibiani. Why don't you take it away there?
Yeah, Bibiani at the desk didn't know I wanted this so bad.